A young nurse, dancing alone in an empty hospital hallway, thought no one was watching. But the paralyzed CEO saw everything, and what he did next would change both of their lives forever. This is a story about unexpected connections, second chances, and the healing power of joy. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. The Unseen Dance. The fluorescent lights of St. Bernadette's Rehabilitation Center hummed softly, casting long shadows down the empty hallway. At 2:17 a.m., the hospital was quiet, except for the faint sound of music escaping from Nurse Lena Carter's wireless earbuds. A slow, soulful Motown melody wrapped around her like a warm embrace as she moved between supply carts, restocking bandages and sanitizer. Lena loved these late-night shifts. No frantic doctors barking orders. No families hovering with worried eyes. Just a rhythmic beep of monitors and the occasional rustle of sheets from patient rooms. It was the closest thing to peace she could find. And so she danced. Not a full performance, of course. Just subtle sways of her hips, the tap of her sneakers against the linoleum, her fingers snapping in time with the bass line. It was her little secret, the one thing that kept the exhaustion at bay. She had always loved to dance, ever since she was a little girl spinning in her grandmother's living room. Back then, movement had been freedom. Now, in this sterile hospital, it was survival. She didn't notice the door to room 214, the VIP suite, was slightly ajar. Inside that room, shrouded in darkness, Daniel Mercer lay motionless in his hospital bed. At 42, he had been a titan of industry, a tech CEO whose name carried weight in boardrooms across the country. Now, he was just another patient, a paralyzed man who had spent the last 3 months drowning in bitterness, pushing away nurses, therapists, even his own family. The accident had taken more than his ability to walk. It had stolen his future. Daniel hadn't slept in days. Pain and frustration kept him awake, his mind replaying the screech of tires, the crushing impact, the doctor's flat delivery of the diagnosis. You may never regain full mobility. And then movement. A shadow flickered past his doorway. Normally, he would have ignored it, but there was something about the rhythm of it, the lightness. Curiosity dragged his gaze toward the sliver of light from the hall. And there she was, Nurse Lena, swaying like she was alone in the world, her scrubs swishing softly as she turned in a slow circle. Her eyes were closed, her lips curved in a small, private smile. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. He hadn't seen someone move like that in months. Not since before the accident, when he used to go salsa dancing every Friday night, back when his body still obeyed him. A strange ache settled in his chest. Lena didn't know she had an audience. She spun once more, her fingers brushing the air as if tracing invisible notes, then froze. Had she just heard a clap? Her pulse jumped. Slowly, she turned toward room 214. The door was definitely open now, wider than before, and through the gap, she could just make out the outline of a man in the dim glow of the monitors. Daniel Mercer, the hospital's most difficult patient. The man who never spoke, never smiled, never thanked anyone. Had he been watching her? A flush crept up her neck. She yanked out her earbuds, the music cutting off abruptly. For a long, silent moment, neither of them moved. Then, the door clicked shut. Lena exhaled sharply. Her hands trembled as she gripped the supply cart. Should she say something? Apologize? Pretend it never happened? Before she could decide, her pager buzzed. A patient in room 207 needed pain meds. Duty snapped her back to reality. She hurried down the hall, but her mind stayed locked on one thought. What had just happened? And more importantly, why did it feel like everything was about to change? The broken man. The morning after the incident, Lena moved through her rounds with forced efficiency. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard as she approached room 214, her pulse betraying her calm exterior. She hesitated outside the door, replaying last night's moment in her mind. The way the door had clicked shut, the weight of unseen eyes. She knocked twice, softer than usual. No response. Lena pushed the door open slowly, half expecting to find Daniel Mercer glaring at her. Instead, he was turned toward the window, his broad shoulders rigid beneath the thin hospital gown. The morning light cut across his profile, sharpening the hollows of his cheeks, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. He didn't acknowledge her. "Mr. Mercer," she said, keeping her tone professional. "Time for your vitals." Silence. Lena exhaled through her nose and stepped closer. The room smelled sterile, like antiseptic and in use potential. She reached for his wrist, her fingers brushing the cool skin of his inner arm to check his pulse. His hand twitched. "You're not supposed to dance in the hallways." The words, low and rough, startled her. Lena's gaze snapped up to find him watching her now, his blue eyes piercing in the washed-out light. There was no anger there, only something weary. Resigned, she recovered quickly. "And you're not supposed to spy on hospital staff," she countered, pressing the stethoscope to his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong. A muscle in his jaw flexed. "I wasn't spying. You were in my line of sight." Lena arched a brow, but said nothing as she noted his temperature. The silence stretched, thick with something unspoken. She could feel him studying her, as if trying to decipher something in her expression. Finally, he spoke again. "You're not like the others." She paused. "How so?" "You don't look at me like I'm made of glass." The observation hung between them. Lena met his gaze evenly. "Should I?" Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, she thought he might shut down again, retreat behind the walls he'd built so carefully. But then, unexpectedly, he muttered, "You've got rhythm." The words were so quiet, she almost missed them. Lena blinked. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. A slow smile tugged at her lips. "You were paying attention." His expression darkened, but there was no real heat behind it. "Don't flatter yourself. I just hate bad dancing." She laughed. The sound brightened the quiet room. "Is that so?" Daniel didn't answer, but she caught the faintest flicker in his eyes. Something almost like amusement. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. Lena finished her checks and stepped back. "All done. You're officially still alive." He grunted. She hesitated, then ventured. "You know, if you hate bad dancing so much, you must know a thing or two yourself." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, tilting her head, "you recognize rhythm. So I'm guessing you've danced before." A shadow crossed his face. His fingers flexed against the sheets, then stilled. A lifetime ago. The ache in his voice was unmistakable. Lena felt it like a physical thing, a weight settling in the space between them. She knew she should leave it alone, knew better than to poke at wounds still raw. But something in her couldn't resist. "What happened?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Life." She waited, giving him the chance to say more. When he didn't, she nodded and turned toward the door. "Salsa." Lena stopped. "What?" His voice was rough, as if the word had been dragged out of him. "I used to dance salsa." She turned back slowly. Daniel's expression was guarded. But there was something there, a flicker of the man he'd been before the accident, before the world had tried to break him. Lena smiled. "Prove it." His brows drew together. "What?" "You heard me." She crossed her arms. "Prove you know salsa." Daniel stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "I'm in a hospital bed. And I can't walk." Lena shrugged. Dancing isn't just in the legs. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, to her surprise, a humorless laugh escaped him. "You're insane." "Maybe," she admitted, "but I'm also right." Daniel shook his head, but she didn't miss the way his fingers tapped once against the mattress. A faint, restless movement, like his body remembered even if he refused to acknowledge it. Lena held his gaze. "Think about it." She left before he could respond. But as the door clicked shut behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, and she had no idea what it meant. Down the hall, Dr. Harris watched from the nurse's station, his arms crossed. What was that about? Lena plastered on a neutral smile. Just routine checks. Harris's eyes narrowed. "Mercer doesn't talk to anyone." She shrugged. Guess today's his lucky day. The doctor didn't look convinced, but he let it go with a warning glance. Don't push him. He's not stable. Lena nodded, but as she walked away, her mind was already spinning, because Daniel Mercer had talked to her, and for the first time in months, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was still a man in there worth saving. The challenge. The next evening, Lena found herself lingering outside room 214 longer than necessary. She told herself it was just routine, checking charts, adjusting IVs, but the truth hung beneath her skin like a live wire. She wanted to see if Daniel would mention their conversation, if he'd even remembered it. She knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. Daniel was sitting up in bed, his tablet glowing in his hands. He didn't look up as she approached, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his awareness of her presence. "Evening, Mr. Mercer," she said, deliberately cheerful. His eyes flicked to her briefly before returning to the screen. Nurse Carter. Lena pretended to study his chart, though she already knew every detail by heart. 6'2", 185 pounds, T7 spinal injury. No significant changes. She set the clipboard down and crossed her arms. "So, have you thought about it?" Daniel's fingers stilled on the tablet. "About what?" "Proving me wrong." A beat of silence. Then, slowly, he lowered the device and met her gaze. "You're serious. Deadly." He exhaled sharply through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. "I can't dance." "You won't dance," she corrected. "There's a difference." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Semantics." Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Tell me something. When you heard the music last night, when you saw me moving, what did you feel?" His expression shuddered. "Nothing." Liar. The word hung between them, sharp and undeniable. For a moment, Lena thought she'd pushed too far. Then Daniel surprised her. "Anger," he admitted quietly. That stopped her. "Anger? At you?" For being able to do something so simple. His fingers curled into the sheets. "At myself. For missing it." The raw honesty in his voice sent a pang through her chest. Lena hesitated, then pulled her phone from her pocket. "Then do something about it." Daniel eyed the device warily. "What are you doing?" Finding the right playlist. She hit play. The opening notes of Vivir mi vida by Mark Anthony filled the room, bright and irresistible. Daniel stiffened as if struck. "Turn that off." "Make me?" His head snapped up, eyes blazing. For the first time since his accident, color flushed his cheeks, real, vibrant anger replacing the numb resignation. Lena held his gaze, unflinching. The song built, horn swelling, rhythm pulsing. Daniel's breathing grew uneven. Then, suddenly, his hands moved, a sharp, instinctive motion, cutting through the air in time with the beat. He froze, as surprised as she was. Lena's lips curved. "See? Your body remembers." Daniel stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "This is ridiculous." "It's human." She took another step forward. "Come on, just your arms." "No one's watching." "That's where you're wrong." The new voice made them both turn. Dr. Harris stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. The music played on, suddenly obscene in the strained silence. Harris stepped inside and shut the door with a quiet click. "Explain." Lena straightened. "Physical therapy." "Really?" His gaze flicked to Daniel's hands, still hovering midair. "Because it looks like a violation of protocol." Daniel surprised them both by speaking up. "It was my idea." Harris raised a brow. "Was it?" A muscle ticked in Daniel's jaw. "I asked her to play music. Familiar stimuli can aid in your recovery." The doctor's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Mercer, I appreciate your initiative, but this isn't—" "Did it help?" Daniel interrupted. Harris paused. "What did it help?" Daniel's voice was steel. "Monitor my vitals. Check my neural responses. Then tell me if it helped." Lena bit back a smile. There he was, the CEO accustomed to being obeyed. Harris exhaled through his nose. "Very well. But Nurse Carter," he fixed her with a stern look, No more unsupervised experiments. She nodded meekly. Of course, doctor. As Harris left, the tension in the room eased by degrees. Lena reached to turn off the music, but Daniel stopped her. Leave it. She arched a brow. Change your mind. His gaze dropped to his hands, now resting palms up on the blankets. The song's almost over. So she let it play, and as the final notes faded, something remarkable happened. Daniel Mercer began to hum, softly, almost imperceptibly. But the melody was unmistakable, the same vibrant tune that filled the room moments before. Lena didn't comment, didn't dare break the spell. When the silence returned, Daniel met her eyes. Tomorrow, bring a better playlist. It wasn't a request. Lena grinned. Yes, sir. As she left his room, her steps lighter than they'd been in weeks, she realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was looking forward to tomorrow. And unless she was mistaken, so was he. The fallout. The next morning, Lena arrived at St. Bernadette's with spring in her step and a carefully curated playlist titled Salsa for Stubborn Patients. She hummed under her breath as she clocked in, barely noticing the odd looks from the night shift nurses. Then she saw Mia waiting by the lockers, arms crossed. You've got some nerve showing up here like everything's normal. Lena froze mid-step. What? Mia grabbed her elbow and yanked her into the break room, slamming the door shut. Harris filed a formal complaint. Administration's livid. Ice flooded Lena's veins. About what? Are you serious? Mia hissed. You're lucky Mercer's lawyers intervened, or you'd already be cleaning out your locker. The world tilted. Lena gripped the counter behind her. Lawyers? Mia threw up her hands. You've been personally entertaining one of our wealthiest patients with unauthorized dance therapy. What did you think would happen? Lena's mouth went dry. She'd expected a reprimand, maybe a warning. Not this. I was just what? Trying to get fired? Because let me tell you, no amount of cute hip shaking is worth your license. The word stung. Lena straightened. It wasn't like that. He responded. Actually engaged for the first time since his accident. Isn't that what rehab's about? Mia's expression softened fractionally. Not when it risks further injury. And definitely not when it puts your career on the line. She sighed. Look, Harris suspended you pending review. 2 weeks, no pay. The air left Lena's lungs. 2 weeks without pay meant choosing between rent and groceries. Again, Mia pressed a folded paper into her hand. The official notice. Go home. And for God's sake, stay away from Mercer. Daniel knew something was wrong the moment Nurse Reynolds entered instead of Lena. Where's Carter? Reynolds didn't meet his eyes as she checked his four. Not assigned to you today. Daniel's fingers curled around the bed rails. Why? Staff rotation. The lie was obvious in her clipped tone. He waited until she left, then grabbed his phone. 3 calls to the front desk yielded nothing. His 4th call went to his attorney. Find out what happened to Nurse Carter. Within the hour, his lawyer confirmed the suspension. Daniel's vision went red at the edges. On what grounds? Alleged breach of protocol. The hospital claimed she endangered your recovery. Daniel let out a sharp laugh. Bullshit. Be that as it may, the lawyer continued, without your explicit testimony that the activities were consensual and beneficial. Set up a meeting with the board. Today, Lena was elbow deep in dishwater when her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Carter? This is Martin Cho, General Counsel for Mercer Technologies. Mr. Mercer requests your presence at St. Bernadette's at 3 p.m. The sponge slipped from her fingers. Excuse me? There's a board meeting regarding your suspension. Your testimony could be valuable. Lena's pulse roared in her ears. Why would he do that? A pause. Then dryly, apparently he dislikes bad dancing and bureaucratic overreach. The conference room was packed when Lena arrived. Hospital administrators, legal teams, even the chief of medicine. Daniel sat at the center of the long table, impeccably dressed in a navy suit despite his wheelchair. He didn't smile when she entered, but his gaze locked onto hers with startling intensity. Dr. Harris spoke first. This is highly irregular. Nurse Carter's conduct. Save me. Daniel's voice cut through the room like a blade. While your textbook therapies had me counting ceiling tiles, one improvised dance session restored more motor function than 6 weeks of your approved regimens. The chief of medicine frowned. Mr. Mercer, with all due respect. Respect would be reviewing the EMG scans from yesterday. Daniel tapped his tablet, projecting data onto the screen. Notice the neural activity spikes during auditory stimulation, coinciding, I might add, with the first voluntary movement in my hand since the accident. Lena's breath caught. He'd been tracking it, quantifying it. Daniel turned to the board. You suspended the only caregiver who treated me like a person rather than a diagnosis. Now I'm offering to fund an experimental dance therapy program on one condition. The room held its breath. Nurse Carter runs it. Lena's knees nearly buckled. Every eye turned to her. Dr. Harris spluttered. She lacks the credentials for her. I'll provide the specialists, Daniel interrupted. She provides a humanity. His gaze found Lena's again. Well, in that moment, she saw it. The unspoken apology in his eyes, the determination to make this right, the man beneath the scars. Lena lifted her chin. When do we start? The board erupted into arguments, but Daniel's quiet smile told her all she needed to know. Game on. A new rhythm. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of Chicago's Palmer House Hotel glittered under crystal chandeliers. Reporters lined perimeter, their cameras flashing as Lena adjusted the microphone at the podium. She smoothed her emerald green dress, a far cry from her old scrubs, and cleared her throat. 12 months ago, I almost lost my job for dancing in a hospital hallway. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Tonight, we celebrate how that same joy became medicine. The screen behind her lit up with before and after footage. Daniel gripping parallel bars, sweat dripping down his temples as he fought to move legs that refused to obey. Then newer clips. Daniel taking his first assisted steps. Daniel swaying in rhythm with other patients during a group session. Daniel laughing as he spun a wheelchair-bound teenager in time with the music. The audience erupted in applause. From his place at the head table, Daniel watched Lena with an expression that made her pulse skip. The tuxedo accentuated his broad shoulders, but it was the ease in his posture that struck her most. The way he carried himself now, unashamed of the braces visible beneath his cuffs. When she joined him after her speech, he handed her a champagne flute. You were magnificent. Lena clinked her glass against his. We were magnificent. The orchestra struck up a salsa number. Daniel set down his drink and extended his hand. Dance with me? Her breath caught. Though he'd regained some mobility, dancing was still, as if reading her mind. He grinned. I've been practicing. And so, in front of 200 guests, Lena placed her hand in his. Daniel stood slowly, his grip firm around her fingers, his other arm circling her waist with surprising grace. The music pulsed around them as they found their rhythm. His steps measured but sure, her movements fluid as she matched his pace. Cameras flashed like fireworks. You're staring, Daniel murmured against her temple. Lena didn't deny it. I'm remembering the man who wouldn't meet my eyes a year ago. His thumb brushed the small of her back. That man didn't know what he was missing. The song built to its crescendo, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the crowd, not the cameras, not the scars both visible and hidden. There was only the music, the movement, and the miraculous alchemy of two broken people making each other whole. As the final note faded, Daniel dipped her gently, his lips brushing her ear. Thank you. For the dance. For the chance. For seeing him when no one else had. Lena's eyes stung as she righted herself. Around them, the room erupted in cheers, but all she saw was the light in Daniel's eyes. Bright, unguarded, alive. The cameras would call it the feel-good story of the year. The medical journals would analyze their methods. But Lena knew the truth. Some healings couldn't be measured. Some miracles began with nothing more than a song in the dark. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, the person watching from the shadows turned out to be the one who'd help you shine. If this story reminded you that hope could be found in unexpected places, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a little light today. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of resilience and human connection. Who knows? The next dance could change everything.